Hello, and welcome to the Butterfly Effect, a show about becoming. In today's episode, we meet Peggy, a survivor who decided to be a thriver. In fact, every survivor is a thriver, but Peggy went a step further and decided to support other survivors in overcoming their trauma, as well as everyone else, as a licensed clinical social worker and therapist based in Rochester, New York. Here's the butterfly effect of Margaret Peggy Wright. Peggy, tell us, why are you?
My purpose? I don't really think I have a big purpose. I like getting to know people. I like getting to understand what what's your ish and how can I help? That's why I became a therapist. Let's dig around and let's figure out what your stuff is and how you can best move forward. Because that was done for me and I want to pay that forward.
And I think that's a very, very strong and inspiring sense of purpose. But speaking of inspirations, I'm wondering what places, which people, or ideas shaped Peggy into Peggy.
I'm Peggy because, well, my grandmother gave me my nickname, Peggy. I was named after mul a multitude of strong Margarets. That's why I don't, that's why I don't go after my name as Margaret because there were multitude, like three or four different women in my mother's life that were Margarets, that were strong women. So I assume that mantle when I need to, but I go by Peggy because Peggy was the nickname my grandmother gave me. And I honor my grandmother, and Peggy just feels like it it fits me more. Well, I grew up near Aguasazne, which is a Native American reservation in northern New York. So a lot of strong women, because the Mohawk women are very strong. They're even advocating now for the school district at Salmon. There's a huge thing going on where timeout was in used incorrectly and there were boxes that were built. So the women of the reservation got together and they went and advocated that their children should be treated correctly. Like I grew up around that. Grew up around people speaking out against things that are not correct. Um and just like speaking truth to the BS. Casual name drop Eve Stoddard. Always love an Eve Stoddard drop. She has been in my mental academic life since St. Lawrence and has carried me through to my doctorate degree. I'm a post-colonial feminist. I love Chandra Mohanty. And I even referenced her. I referenced her in my SYE and I referenced her in my doctoral defense. And I said, I am a post-colonial feminist social worker, which I am. At my heart, I'm a global studies and post-colonial feminist. It That's how I see the world. Like you have to, as a white woman, I have to sit back, sit down and say, what's your story and how can I add my voice to this and in a reparative way, not a destructive way.
And right now, you are the clinical social worker. Could you
Mhm.
tell us like about your path towards that profession? What were the reasons about embarking on that journey out of countless of journeys that you could embark on?
I fell into social work. So I went to seminary after St. Lawrence. And then there was a joint degree between the seminary and the university I attended. And I was a preventive social worker for a while. So I helped families stay out of foster care, helped their youth stay out of foster care. And I learned a lot. But that type of environment where you were working alongside CPS and not getting clinical hours, I was getting frustrated by the systems and I wasn't as challenged mentally or I was challenged, but not like in the way that I needed to be challenged. So I went to work for another local nonprofit here in Rochester where I still did home visits, but in a different capacity. And it was strictly mental health. It wasn't like doing case management and mental health. I got burned out really quick with the case management aspect of the preventive social worker role. So doing strictly mental health, where we sit down and we like talk through patterns, themes, and we get to know like what's going on for you. That's really where I've thrived. So I worked with youth from 5 to 21, and I found that I love working with teens and adults specifically. And I worked at that local nonprofit for about 5 years until the program closed. And then went into group practice and I started working with adults again since first time since preventive. And I've just been thriving in private practice.
And you've been thriving through many obstacles in your life. What do you
Mm.
think personally shaped you to serve that role of a clinical social worker?
Well, the complex trauma and the being a survivor of sexual abuse, right? And the ability to just like I have a lot of I have a lot of people who deal with hyper intellectualization on my caseloads. I don't know why they find me, but they find me and I can spot it. And I'm like, "Hey, let's have the emotion rest. It's okay to let the stuff down." And the people pleasing, like complex PTSD, it's rampant on my caseload, which that's okay. That's what I specialize in. And like just having that not survivor, but that survivorhood, now thriverhood mentality of like, I see you, I know where you're at, and I know where you could go. I've been down that path. It gives me an extra level in the clinical space. That's not just the clinician, it's like the human in the clinician.
And to dig a little bit deeper, if it's okay, I'm
Mhm.
actually wondering about the process and mechanism of transitioning from survivor to a person who helps others survive. In a way,
Yeah.
first, who helped you or what helped you to survive? And then,
I
what was this transition path to be the helper?
So I had to do a lot of reparenting in my adulthood. It started actually in grad school. I had two key therapists that helped me. One during grad school, she moved out of state, which that happens. And then I had another one at the start of my career where I got triggered during session where someone was talking about like their own trauma and I felt myself freeze. I felt myself disassociating in session and I was like, I can't do this. I need like to get connected to somebody. And it was really a lot of like processing how do I show up for myself and how do I show up for the client. So I healed a lot by dealing with those emotional trauma triggers during sessions. And like I acknowledge them if they come up during session and I say, listen, self, it's okay. We will acknowledge that after session. We're not here for us, we're here for the client.
If there is someone listening and watching us today who themselves are a survivor of childhood abuse or sexual violence and they haven't spoken yet, what suggestion you would have to this person?
You're never too late to process your trauma. Healing never stops, right? And complex PTSD and because it's not just so my complex PTSD is not just from the sexual abuse. There's other incidents that contributed to it as well. But healing takes a lifetime and you can go in and out of treatment as much as you need. So treatment can be meds, it can be medication, it can be going to see a therapist, it can be going to peer support. Peer support services have been found to be very helpful. It's someone who has lived experience. If you don't want to go talk to a therapist, like there are people who are out there, I would say be wary of coaches. Coaches are not licensed and it's not regulated. That's the only caveat. Like make sure you do your homework on the coach. Like that's just my only caveat. Because peer support specialists, medication providers, therapists, most all of us are licensed and we all have to go through ethics training and we have to take tests and we have to go through continuing education requirements and there's so much training behind the license and for me like I had to do 2000 hours of clinical hours, direct clinical hours before I took my LCSW test.
And you mentioned you went through this 2000 hours of training. What
Mhm.
those hours has have showed you about yourself and humanity that you never thought of before?
So most of my clinical hours were with kids. I all of my clinical hours were working with youth. And you have to have your base. So as a clinician, you have to be able to like break your stuff down, break your clinical skills down. It doesn't matter at the end of the day if you're using dialectical behavior therapy, cognitive behavior therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy. You have to be able to explain it on a level that's obtainable for people. And if it's not, you have to co-regulate with someone. And the therapeutic rapport is so important. Studies have shown that it's 60% the therapeutic alliance that makes a skill effective. So it's the relationship. And that's what makes therapy sacred because it's not a natural space. Like when you get into therapy, you're slowing down in a fast world. Yeah. You're slowing all your stuff down and you're sitting with your stuff. That is not a natural space for us to be in.
It actually sounds very interesting that in this very quick and busy time, we have spaces like therapy space to slow down, to open ourselves. And I know many people open themselves in front of you.
Mhm.
And now you're also having your own practice in Rochester area. What are the problems that people approach you with? Like, if you can speak about it, like, what are the common
Yeah.
threats?
So again, I deal with a lot of complex PTSD and a lot of family issues because that's what I advertise that I do. Intergenerational trauma and communication patterns and talking through like what that looks like for people. Yeah, a lot of childhood stuff can come up for the adults, so a lot of trauma. So some days can be heavy, which that's okay. Like you have heavy stuff, like leave it here. Not here, but like leave it in my office. I do like what I call adult whimsy. I want my space to be I want the space to be light because there's going to be heavy stuff we talk about. And there's a lot of color in my office. There's a lot of color. So I'm relaxed and the clients know that and they can just go,
And then the client comes with this heavy luggage of mostly negative experience, and they leave some of those pieces of luggage at your place. How you cope after those visits, because I can imagine speaking to your own trauma and your own experience, it might be almost like re-traumatizing yourself. How you go out of that office as a therapist and kind of provide the self-help to yourself afterwards.
yeah, so it can be sometimes, especially if the story is very similar, because that's counter transference, right? It's like a split. So it's like there's four trains going on in my head at all times. There's personal Peggy, there's the post-colonial feminist, there's social worker, and then there's clinician. And the social worker and clinician have two distinct voices because the social worker is always looking for like all of the needs, and the clinician's looking for the mental health and like the history and everything. So for those two tracks when they're on and when I'm on, I'm on. Like when my brain is on, I'm solely on the person. And that's draining. Like that can be so that closes down and when that person is gone, that case file is closed. I close that as soon as the person walks out. Or as soon as I walk them out, the case is closed and we pick it up or we see each other next time. Unless I need to use supervision and have a consultation. It's been a very It's like a meditative practice where I just close it and I leave it there because it's not my stuff. My stuff is pretty much healed. Like I've done a lot of personal work to make sure like my stuff is okay to do the work. I'm at a spot where I'm okay to do processing with people and to like help them work through their stuff. Because I think you, I, I'm also in the seat too. So I'm on either side of the seat. So I have my own therapist. So I have like once a month where I go in and I'm like, hey, here's all my ish. Here's all my personal ish. And she's just like, uh-huh, 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 uh-huh. And she helps me like tear it apart, right? So like I'm on either side of it. So that keeps me of like, oh yeah, this is what it feels like on this side and this is what it feels like on this side. It's completely different situations. So like if I'm on the therapist side, I'm keeping track of all the patterns and I'm keeping track of all the stuff. Whereas if I'm on the client side, I'm just like, here's all my stuff, help me sort it.
I think that's an amazing perspective, and I think that also gives you a more strength and a robust perspective to face your clients, being on both sides of
Hmm.
the table. I'm also wondering because I think there is also a choice that a patient, client needs to make about speaking up. And there might be some people who say, oh, there is this family fabric that I don't want to tear because of speaking up of what happened to me. Or maybe I am a very committed believer and religious person and I don't want to speak up to
Hmm.
harm my church or my religion, yet I experience some form of abuse and sexual violence. What would you tell to those people who are thinking, should I speak up and how to speak up?
Your story is your story. It's not my story. I'm just here to help you process it. Like your choice. So I'm thinking from a trauma responsive lens of like, if you feel that your choice to speak up, like what does that look like? Is it the community? Is it like taking charges against the police to the police? Is it taking formal court action? Is it like what does that? Because I don't know if you knew this, but clergy are not mandated reporters. I have to. If I didn't, that would be my license. If I suspect, I have to report. In sexual abuse, if you press charges, I'll do what the local ad I know. So in Monroe County, Bavona, which is the Child Advocacy Center, will get involved, and the youth will most likely get connected with the counselor, and they'll go in for what they call a forensic interview. And CPS will get involved, and there will be a police investigator. But the forensic interview, that's a specialist who knows how to like ask the questions in a way that's not leading, and will go through and talk through like what happened, how it happened, and like different information. Um, and then potentially the police will figure if like they press charges or not. Civil, I don't know about civil. It's not my area. This is not my area of scope.
And we spoke about this like institutional response, but how you and institutions can ensure that that person is not alone, that they probably felt lonely entire lifetime as victims and survivors. How to ensure that they don't feel lonely anymore after telling someone else, I'm a survivor.
What I've been doing recently, especially, is I ensure like we have something called an eco map. I do it informally. It's where you like talk about like different people in your community and like it's a formal like it's a map. You have like it's a spider web map. But I do it informally where I go, okay, so like who are people you can talk to? Who's this? Who's this? Who's this? Who are the people in your life? And when you're talking about trauma, I've been saying to people, I want you to be selfish after our session and I want you to like talk to someone and I want you to go do something that's selfish for you because you've left so much here today. Yeah. So like they're re-engaging in rest and they're re-engaging back with their people to like rejuvenate themselves.
I use the word loneliness, but we live in this global north, in this promise of being social, especially with like so-called social media. how you as a clinician see the impact of technology and social media on people that
Mm.
come to your office or yourself.
So I'm gonna use historic. So historically in my career, the social media has run rampant with teens. Anxiety, depression, body image, because and fights. So many fights because everyone wants to do Instagram stories and like up the ante. Like there's no like distress tolerance or no space of like I'm gonna give it 5 minutes. You're just gonna post it. It's reactionary. And then I go, oh yeah, back in my day, we had to log on the internet. We had to go on MySpace. Like so much. I deleted TikTok back in July because I saw like I was like, stuff is coming where it's going to be more censored, and I didn't want to deal with that. And I actually got the shakes from like when I was on my phone and I was like going over, and like going poop, and then the app wasn't there, and I was like, what? You know, like I got the physical shakes.
And I know many of us experience those digital things, but then they translate to the physical world, and that sometimes
Right.
creates even more loneliness. I also feel like these days we hear a lot about people being neurodivergent, and
Mm.
I almost have a feeling like we hear more and more. Like, why? And what does it mean?
I'm going to give you my definition, not the standard definition. My definition is neurodivergence is someone who thinks differently than like a typical person. There's the developmental disabilities, intellectual disabilities like autism and ADHD. That's like the normal neurotypical, but I would also include like anxiety, depression, like anyone with a mental health disorder could be neurotypical. PTSD because like yeah, your brain gets altered. So I've always had a chemical imbalance. I don't know if I told you, but I've been on medication for 8 years. 8 years. I have a serotonin imbalance. I couldn't do this job without my medication. I will go down on that. Like that is a I will go down for that. Like I would not be able to do this job without my meds because my anxiety would just spiral. And that's a serotonin imbalance. Like so anyone with like things that they need to function differently. So I struggle with I get task paralysis sometimes, not as bad as someone with ADHD or autism, but motivation is a thing. So you have to like make so someone with some deficits and you have to figure out like how to like meet those deficit needs. Someone with sensory issues and just like yeah, I think at some level like we're all on a spectrum at some level where there's no normal is subjective and there is no normal. We've just been conditioned that there is, but there's not. Everyone has their own baseline, and your baseline's different than mine, and mine is different than someone like Joe Schmo's down the street.
I appreciate this perspective because I think that's very important to people acknowledge that we are all, to some extent, on a spectrum of different magical powers, but also limitations that we carry. And too many of us carry also the survivorship of childhood abuse and sexual abuse. What would be the one sentence you wanna tell people who are the survivors?
You overcame it. The
And I
worst
know
is
you overcame it as well.
yeah, the worst is already done. Like you overcame it and it's already you can heal.
And the healing sometimes takes the lifetime and
Yeah.
many butterfly flights. I was wondering, what is your butterfly effect?
My ideal is like the people that I work with will prosper.
Thank you so much, Peggy, for your time to share and inspire others to speak up, to seek support, and to let us know that we are never alone.
course, Lukash, anytime, you know that.